各位早晨。而家時間到啦，我哋亦都有足。
Good morning, members. It's the appointed time with form a quorum. Okay, so we have to wait a bit. A member has just left.
OK， 係啦，我哋而家有足夠嘅法定人數。
All right, now we have a quorum. I call the meeting to order now. Item number 1, confirmation of minutes of our meeting held on the 26th of November. The minutes have been sent to members. So far, the Secretariat hasn't received any proposed amendment. The members have nothing to propose in terms of amendment. May I invite members to confirm the minutes of the last meeting? Okay. Item 2, information paper issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat has sent some information papers to members, and the titles are set out in the agenda under item 2. Any questions? If not, we move on to item 3. Items for discussion at the next meeting. The next meeting will be held on the 25th of February. It's a Monday. 2 items have been proposed by the administration. Number 1, Hong Kong Tourism Board Work Plan for 2013-2014. Second, update on Hong Kong Disneyland. Any comments? If not, then I would like to inform members that the Secretariat has received a letter from Friends of the Earth requesting that this panel and also the Environmental Affairs panel should jointly conduct a public hearing on the midterm review regarding the 2 power companies. We have invited 3 directors of Bureau to come here today to discuss with us policy address related issues. So I'm going to handle the discussion. I'm going to discuss this under AOB. Item 4. Briefing by the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development on relevant policy initiatives in the CE's 2013 policy address. I'd like to welcome the Secretary and other officials. May I invite the Secretary to give a briefing first? Well, the paper sets out the new initiatives and ongoing initiatives. I would like to highlight some of them here. On tourism, in 2012, the number of visitors coming to Hong Kong exceeded 48 million. Compared with 2011, there was an increase of 16%. Looking ahead to 2013, we expect tourism industry in Hong Kong will face competition from other cities in the region, and also the uncertainty in global economy and the stress in the geopolitical scene. However, we are still cautiously optimistic about our tourism industry. We are going to continue to invest in our tourism infrastructure to increase our attractiveness and our capacity. In terms of attractions, Ocean Park received 7.1 million visitors last year, which is a record high. The Ocean Park is planning for a new water attraction at Taxi 1. We are examining the development proposal from Ocean Park. Also, they are retendering for their hotel projects. We cooperate with Ocean Park closely so that this ocean hotel project can be launched earlier. Turning to Disneyland, the current expansion plan is progressing well. Apart from this plan, there will be a next stage of development and a few more attractions and hotel will be planned. They are doing planning. We expect to come back to report to the panel on the detailed proposal and financial arrangements within this year. Kai Tak Cruise Terminal, well, the project is progressing well. The first berth will be commissioned in the middle of this year. The contract to manage the cruise terminal was awarded to Worldwide Cruise Terminal last year. We will cooperate with the contractor to provide quality service to visitors. We're also going to cooperate closely with Hong Kong Tourism Board on cruise tourism. We will encourage cruise companies to plan for more routes, and there will also be more land-based itineraries to attract more cruise passengers to Hong Kong. On regulation of the tourism industry, we conducted a review in 2011. After that, we decided to set up a statutory body, the Travel Industry Authority, so as to put under one roof the regulation of tourism agencies and tourist guides. We are now planning for the new regulation regime. Then we will talk to the industry over details of the reform. We'll come back to report the progress to this panel later this year. At the same time, we are also working on the legislation for the Tourism Industry Authority. A bill is expected to be tabled within this year to this Council. Turning to competition, this Council enacted the competition ordinance last June. This is a milestone in the development of competition policy in Hong Kong, signifying our determination in maintaining fair and free competition in the market. We implemented the first phase, and at this point we are in the spearheading the establishment of the Competition Commission and the Competition Tribunal. To this end, the Competition Ordinance Commencement Notice 2012 has been passed, so that it will take effect on the 28th of November 2012. As for the other provisions relating to the Commission and the Tribunal, they will be effective on the 18th of January and 1st of August this year, respectively. We are now also working on the guidelines to facilitate compliance. We are going to consult the relevant stakeholders and this Council to make sure that the guidelines are formulated to suit our needs. At the same time, the judiciary is also preparing subsidiary legislation to the tribunal proceedings to make all necessary arrangements to prepare for the full operation of the tribunal. And after all these have been done, the ordinance will be brought into full operation. Before that, in the transitional period, we will allow people to be familiarized with the new ordinance and make necessary adjustments. Consumer protection, in July 2012, the Unfair Trade Description Unfair Trade Practices Ordinance was enacted, which criminalized some commonly seen unfair trade practices, and also to introduce a civil compliance-based mechanism to encourage compliance by traders and to stop identifying non-compliant practices. The Customs and Excise Department and the Office of the Communications Authority are the law enforcement agencies. They are now consulting stakeholders on the draft enforcement guidelines. We will take into account reviews received, and the consultation will be extended by 2 months so that it would end on the 17th of March. We believe this would make the guidelines more appropriate to our circumstances. That's my introduction. I'm happy to take questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. It's the Q&A session time now. We have a number of members wishing to raise questions. Please raise your hands. And I'm going to draw a line now. Paul Chair, Mr. Paul Chair. Mr. Hu Jiwei, Mr. Lim Tai-fai, Mr. Yik Ji-ming. Today, we have representatives from 3 bureaus to brief us on the policy-related initiatives and also to answer questions. So time is rather tight. So I'll give each member 3 minutes please be succinct. 3 minutes for questions and answers. I'm going to enforce this strictly in case of exceedance. Mr. Wong Kok-heng, in your last part of your speech, you talk about protecting the consumer and also the trade description, the unfair trade practices amendment ordinance, and also the consultation exercise will end on the 17th of March. What are you going to do in the meantime to protect consumer interests? I have organized a press conference lately on consumer protection related matters. They have a complaint to the Consumer Council, and the council sort of acts like a mailbox in that it would only refer the complaint to the authority. And what about the pyramid selling ordinance, which is now in force? How many complaints have been received and how many cases have been handled? Secretary, 2 questions. The amendment ordinance introduces many new offenses, and also the service industry is put under the ambit of the amendment ordinance. And before the amendment ordinance is fully operational, we'll have to stick to the existing ordinance. At the same time, through publicity, we would like to let the public know to avoid identify areas of problem. We hope after consultation we can promulgate the guidelines quickly. On pyramid selling, well, it was introduced last year. I don't have information with me now. I can supplement in writing later. On the enforcement guidelines, yes, you should consult widely, but there are consumers whose interests are already affected. I don't think they want to wait until your guidelines are ready. I suppose they are already protected now, or depending on what kind of unfair trade practices you are talking about. If you are talking about those practices which will be regulated under the amendment ordinance, but not before, then of course they are not covered. We hope that through public education we can equip the consumer so that they can avoid the traps. That is by way of some kind of empowerment. Miss Elizabeth Kwok, the DAB, supports the government's initiative to develop the economy. We hope the government can come up with comprehensive economic and industry policies, and active support should be provided to selected industries. And let's hope that we will not just be sitting on our laurels. And on tourism attractions, it's important that we develop more. Apart from the Disneyland and the ocean park and the cruise terminal, what are the major attractions will be developed by the government in the future? Second, consumer protection. There are group purchases conducted online, and they have attracted a number of complaints. According to the Consumer Council, it's a few times more this year. And for beauty services, there was an increase of 17%. So what has the administration got to tackle these complaints related to group purchases? The DAB has been advocating a cooling off period for the prepaid services. Tourism, I'll ask the Commissioner for Tourism to respond. Thank you for your question. Tourism development is a very important part of our economic development. In terms of attractions, well, we concentrate on the plans of the Ocean Park and the Hong Kong Disneyland. We are looking into the further plans after the current projects are completed. We'll be coming back to report to members for more news later on. Apart from hardware, we also hope to do something about software. That is, we want to attract tourists to stay for longer periods. For example, together with Yamate Theatre, we are providing some experimental programs for tourists. So there will be new projects in terms of hardware, and in terms of software, we want to enrich their program of visit and to make our attractions even more appealing. On beauty service and group purchases, I would like to say that in the amendment ordinance passed last year, there was some new regulatory provisions such as false trade description, misleading omission, aggressive commercial practices, bait advertisement, bait and switch, and wrongly accepting payment, and so on and so forth, which would be regulated under the amendment ordinance. These would, to some extent, address these trade practices identified by the member. The very first task is to bring into operation the amendment ordinance before we consider the next step. This is a very wide issue indeed.
Mr. Dennis Kwok, I would like to ask about the Competition Commission as well as the professional bodies under it. In terms of the professional bodies, of course, Secretary, you know, is that we must have people who really study competition law, maybe scholars or professionals, accountants as well as economic scholars. So these professionals are very important in terms of enforcing the competition ordinance. So I would like to ask, when you are about to hire these professionals, so how wide would you conduct your search? Which countries, or perhaps would there be enough these types of people in Hong Kong? In terms of hiring, I would like you to make some answers respond to that. Yes, thank you, Secretary. In terms of competition ordinance and Annex 5, it talks about how the CE will take consideration in terms of hiring professionals. It will be in economics, in terms also in the sectors, and they must have the relevant experience and the relevant policies. In terms of the executive framework, of course, we must have professionals. We'll see that they must have experience in law, economics, business management. Furthermore, they must have experience in competition law. So we will use a merit-based hiring because there is no industry competition law in Hong Kong right now. So there may not be very many of them in Hong Kong. So in terms of hiring, I would only know how the selection would be like. But as the member had said earlier, of course, we're not going to just, if we do lack such personnel in Hong Kong, we're not going to not consider international personnel if they have such professional experience. So we will widen the scope if that is the case. So we will not rule out hiring foreign professionals. So this work is already started, Chairman. First, we must start a competition commission. So we'll start in January 18th. That is the ordinance will come into effect on that date. So in terms of hiring work, will be undertaken by that framework. So as I understand it, some universities are already starting some courses to train lawyers or other professionals Deputy Chairman. I would like to ask the Secretary, in the policy address for economics, it mentions a lot about the mainland market, and there's only one paragraph talking about other external markets in terms of free trade. It also talks about on the mainland, the government is very concentrated on the government-to-government work, but not so much with other places outside of Hong Kong. So I would like to ask more about that. Secondly, I would like to ask the Economic Development Commission will have 4 different working groups, but the Financial Secretary says we must not ignore traditional sectors, but the policy address does not talk about how we will develop these traditional sectors, such as watches or the looming trades. So I would like to ask garment trade. So I would like to ask about that. In terms of the policy address, of course, right now the mainland market is expanding very quickly and is a very big market, so we must be proactive in this. But of course, does not mean that the policy address does not talking about other external regions. So we will work on that. For example, one market is of course the ASEAN. So we will continue to fight for entering into that, as well as the China Free Trade region. So in the future, we will cooperate with the business sector to develop our markets in this area. Of course, in terms of government-to-government areas, we need cooperation from business sectors, and so we must have more interaction from that. And so we will discuss it with various trade organizations. We also see in terms of the Economic Development Commission, we can see that there's a lot of experience in terms of international trade, especially, for example, in maritimes, aviation, and logistics. There are a lot of very experienced personnel in that, and we hope to take advantage of these. Of course, Hong Kong is an external economic system, so we will put more effort into this. In terms of the 4 main sectors, of course, it is also within the work of the EDC. So there's a reorganization in terms of the 4 traditional sectors as well as the new targeted sectors. And when we're talking about tourism, we're talking about MICE and as well as others. There can be a cooperation with the traditional sector as well as the new sectors of innovation and technology. Next is Mr. Yu Si-wing. Next, I would like to ask the administration, in terms, there will be more resources put into traditional initiatives such as Ocean Park or Hong Kong Disneyland. But in terms of tourism, we don't need just these areas. A lot of tourists want to see other sides of Hong Kong. So, for example, in the outlying islands, I've been to the outlying islands often these few years, and many tourists do go to there, but there's not enough infrastructure for that. But in terms of for example, in Changzhou, would you consider to put more resources into these outlying islands to develop a tourism industry? Furthermore, in terms of competition ordinance, it will be coming into effect 18th of January, and a lot of people I talk to really don't understand about the contents of this ordinance and also the impact on the industry. So this is very dangerous. After its enactment, so maybe they'll infringe the law without knowing it, and there'll be a big problem. I hope the administration, in terms of promotion, in terms of advertising, so how will you let the tourism industry or consumers will have more understanding of this so they won't fall into a trap? First, thank you. In terms of outlying islands, I would like to ask the Commissioner for Tourism. Thank you for your question. I can agree with what you have said in terms that we should develop diversity in terms of tourism attractions. Now, the outlying islands is very attractive places for tourists. So we have two main areas of development. So, for example, in some festivals, such as the Changchou festivals, the HKTB has promoted these festivals heavily in outside markets to attract tourists to come to Hong Kong. In the past, we have also undertaken discussions and promotions with the local offices in outlying islands. Furthermore, in terms of Lantau Island, it will be a very big point of our developments. For example, in the bridge that's being built right now, so it will be there's a great potential for development. So we're also so in terms of some hotels and tourist attractions in Lantau Island, we're developing such things and hope that there will be a convention-type tourism area in those islands. We're also developing different tourist spots and as well as promoting these spots so to fulfill the potential of the Lantau Island. In terms of competition ordinance, we are implementing in phases to let the public understand the impact of the competition ordinance. So we will do this in phases. First is to set up the commission, and then they will undertake advertising and promotion works. Thank you. Mr. Xin Zhongkai. Yes, I'm looking at the Travel Industry Authority. So last year, the government mentioned that the travel industry should replace the Travel Industry Council. So perhaps I would like to ask the government, so your plan, is it that in the future, it seems that there's so the registry for travel agents, would it be a monitoring body, or would it be that the Travel Industry Council? So what is the relationship between these three bodies? Can you explain this, please? I would like the Commissioner to answer. Thank you for your questions. And to future, for the regulation of tourism industry, the policy is very clear. We will have an independent statutory body called the Travel Industry Authority. Now, it will, in terms of it will merge the functions of the current Travel Industry Council as well as the current regulatory regimes for travel agents. So it will unify the monitoring for travel agents as well as tourist guides and tour escorts. So in the mid-year of this year, we hope to let LegCo know how the details in terms of setting up the TIA. In terms of enacting laws, we will give you the details in the mid-year. In the next few months, we will once again discuss with the travel industry as well as other stakeholders, and we'll have a long-term with a more detailed consultant. So in around June, we'll come back and we can reflect those opinions to the LegCo. Thank you. So what is the registry? Would registry be repealed? Registry for travel agents. So in terms of the registry and the TIC, both of these functions will be handed over to TIA in the future. So the registry does not need to exist after setting up of the TIA. But in terms of the TIC, besides monitoring of the travel industry, they have other functions. So outside of the regulatory functions, they can have other roles to play. And so we are discussing it with the industry right now. So in terms of TIC, they have a very important role if there are some sudden events. So like we hope to retain these roles. Next, Mr. Mapote.
Well, there are voices in the community criticizing that the policy address fails in many aspects other than land supply. One of the controversy we face is the parallel traders coming to Hong Kong as visitors and the government has got no position about this. Well, this is a happy problem because with more tourists and more turnover is a good thing, but the government has make a mess of it because of lack of infrastructure. As the official responsible for tourism, you should push other departments to do more, whether we're talking about Lantau or Northwest NT. There should be more facilities to tie in with the arrival of more tourists. And now people have to compete with visitors for infant formula. This is far from satisfactory. So what can you do in terms of software to make sure that difficulties arising from more visitors can be addressed, and behavior on the part of Hong Kong residents because of some grievances can be avoided, and how can we make Hong Kong an even more attractive tourism destination? We've been doing a lot of things on hardware. Our attractions, our theme parks are embarking on expansion plans. I'm not talking about such facilities. Well, since we are talking about tourism, of course, I look at it from this angle. Yes, we are receiving quite a large number of tourists in 2012. Chairman, the time is limited. Please tell us what you can do to help these tourists who are shopping in Hong Kong so as to avoid unnecessary disputes and problems. Well, our land is limited. We can only increase our facilities to respond. In terms of software, instead of hospitality culture, and also the provision of facilities, we can work on these. If we provide commercial facilities to tie in with tourism, well, that's another issue that has to do with land use, and that's not actually covered by today's discussion. Well, that's why I want you to take the initiative to make arrangements for enhancing software, and I'm disappointed that you are leading us down a circular path here. I would like to follow up the questions raised by Paul earlier in the function. You said that our capacity was not limited, and therefore we had to plan. We now have this issue. Mainland visitors are coming to Hong Kong to shop. Many overseas countries make special provisions for boundary shopping activities. They may have shopping facilities located near the boundary so that visitors and parallel traders can carry out their activities in those facilities. Can we have a boundary shopping facility set up? You said that the issues we raised were not related to your portfolio. Well, if you are not willing to take the initiative, you are not going to secure land from the policy bureaus responsible for land and planning, and you say that it's not your responsibility. You have failed to discharge your duty. Chairman, we are now talking about tourism facilities. So I was talking about attractions and software. If you say we need to expand our commercial facilities for shoppers or for visitors, I welcomed specific proposals, and the administration is more than willing to consider these proposals. Chairman, it seems that the Secretary is saying that we are, in terms of tourism, we are only talking about attractions, and shopping is not part of it. Well, Mr. Wu, you talk about expansion of our facilities and also how we should plan for these. Well, that's not within the ambit of this panel, but it doesn't matter. I'll ask the Secretary to relate Mr. Wu's comments to the relevant bureaus. Well, there was also a point about the cooling off period to protect the consumer, and we want to know what the next step will be in the introduction of a cooling off period. Well, this is a very controversial proposal. It may have a profound impact on business operations. When we combat unfair trade practices, I think the first step should be to enforce the amendment ordinance. We can only consider the next step for the cooling off period after consultation. Do you have a timetable? We don't have a timetable as such, but the most important task at hand will be to implement the amendment ordinance. Mr. Lam Tai Fai, if tourism has nothing to do with shopping, and tourists will only come to Hong Kong to live in a hotel and go to attractions, our economy will be severely affected. Whether we're talking about short-term, medium-term, and long-term, when we want to develop our economy, we have to look at the economic structure. Our economic structure is slanted in favor of financial services and real property. And this time, this inclination is once again highlighted. I know we are not talking about industry here, but we attach importance to financial services and real property instead of other industries. We want to attract more tourists to come to Hong Kong for shopping, for sightseeing, and whatever. With Ocean Park, the Disneyland, and the cruise terminal, well, the policy is one that would facilitate inbound tourists. But Hong Kong people don't like to go to the Disneyland or the Ocean Park because they are packed with mainland tourists. As for the cruise terminal, what Hong Kong people would do might be to take a photo at the cruise terminal. But there aren't many attractions for local people. They can perhaps go to a shopping mall since it's so hot in summer, and they can hardly have access to the sports facilities. So what would you do to provide more attractions to local people in terms of tourism attractions? You can't go ask them to go to the Ocean Park and the Disneyland forever and ever. Well, let me clarify the scope here. Here we're talking about tourism, and we're talking about attracting overseas tourists to Hong Kong. If we are talking about providing facilities and attractions for local people, of course it's important, but it's not really the ambit of this panel. So are you saying that our attractions are for overseas tourists only and not for local people? Well, I think Mr. Lam is saying that we should provide more attractions other than shopping facilities. Of course, the Disneyland attracts overseas visitors, but it also provides a rich experience for local people, local visitors. But I'm just saying that this is not part of our scope here today. Maybe you should discuss it under the ambit of Home Affairs. Mr. Frankie Yip. It seems that the CE said very little about economic development in his policy address. Today, I'm more concerned about competition ordinance. As Mr. Yu Si-wing has said, many SMEs are rather unclear about what's at stake. You are going to do some public education and publicity. I hope you would attach importance to enhancing understanding on the part of SMEs. As for tourist attractions, if no local people go to these attractions, they're not going to attract overseas visitors as well. So the two cannot be separated. I would like to remind the Secretary of that. On competition ordinance, as I've said, it will be brought into operation in phases. We'll set up the commission, and the commission will have its own hierarchy, and then there will be hiring and public education, publicity, and consultation. Consultation is on the guidelines. The industry will be consulted, and through education they will understand what the law regulates and make adjustments to their action on attractions, tourism attractions, the theme parks, green tourism are attractive to local people too. And we're talking about a variety of attractions attracting different visitors. Today, our discussion is about providing a rich experience for overseas visitors through the provision of facilities. 3 more members have raised hands to ask questions since they joined us after I drew the line. Perhaps Ms. Michael Tin. Let me finish first. What do you want to say? Chairman, please be careful. This is not the first time. I find it rather curious. You always call me by the name of my brother. I hope you'll be more careful next time. I don't quite get it. What do you mean? Mr. James Tin is not here. Well, it's just a small matter. 1.5 minutes for each member. Secretary, I'll give you 3 minutes to answer their questions. Ms. Chen Yun Han. Thank you, Chairman. This is simple. I'm talking about the cruise terminal mentioned by the Secretary. There are 2 problems. Mr. Stephen Yip was the Secretary then, and that's the idea of building a helipad next to the cruise terminal. The Bureau was insistent about this. Many community organizations and some people involved in planning have some views about that. And now the policy address talk about doing more at the tip of the runway. I hope you can make it specific that the helipad will be abolished. And you may also say that the power supply from land is not your responsibility. According to Ms. Christine Lowe, let's say we enact the law next year, it will take a few more years for land supply from land to be available. The Secretary for the Environment is Mr. Wong Kam Sing, but you are responsible for the cruise terminal. You two must work together. 2 questions. I expect simple answers. Then we have Mr. Michael Tin to ask his questions. I'll ask the Secretary to respond to all your questions in one go. The Secretary seems to have given us the impression that we can only talk to you about the policy address initiatives. Are you saying that in our coming panel meetings we can only ask you questions about policy address initiatives? And if we want to make any comments on economic development, we can only approach the CE. Is that what you are suggesting? On tourism, regarding Bruce Lee's residence or former residence, the owner was willing to hand over the residence, but then the plan fell through. So what's your commitment here? Can you tell us why that particular plan fell through? Mr. Wong Ting Kwong.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask the Secretary in terms of cruise terminals. So it will be built and be used in the future in phases. Now, I've heard that some cruise terminal operators want to develop the cruise terminals not only be a intermediate port, but they think that we should be a main port for this. So, do you have any plans about this? Furthermore, also, according to reports, Hong Kong Disneyland wishes to, not Hong Kong Disneyland, the Disney Corporation, to have a cruise between the Disneyland and the cruise terminal. So what do you have to say about that? Mr. Albert Chan, simply, I hope the Secretary will take note that in terms of encouraging tourism, it has caused great suffering to Hong Kong people, such as for the Hong Kong mothers do not have formula. So you are increasing tourism industry and you are completely ignoring the welfare of Hong Kong people. If you look at the policy address, it is following the economic policies of the previous CEs, and there are no new ideas. So 80 to 90% of it is talking about these things that left before from previous administration, but then later on the policy address is continuing the work of previous administrations and do not care about the industry developments. So we think that the government should take more initiative in developing industry as well as more local economic economic sectors that are more unique to our region. So that is the lifeblood of Hong Kong. Otherwise, we're only benefiting the real estate developers. Secretary. So there are several questions about cruise terminals from as well as the Disneyland ferry. And Mr. Michael Tian asked about the Bruce Lee Museum, and Albert Chan is asking about the mainland tourists in Hong Kong. Secretary. The Commissioner first. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Perhaps I will answer about cruise terminals. In terms of power supply on land, so we're very happy to cooperate with the requirements of the Environment Bureau. So there was only the international standard was set up last year. So we are we were setting up the technical requirements for this. So when we're building this facility, we will follow these standards. In terms of the cruise terminal ports, of course, at first we hope that more and more ships will come. So we hope to be a mother port. But in terms of the interim bill, as an interim port, is something that we will also welcome. We hope that more ships will come to Hong Kong. As to whether or not can there be any connections with the cruise terminal to other places, that must be discussed with the cruise operators, and we hope that in terms of there will be a convenience for tourists to go to and from Hong Kong. That's all. I think that's all the questions. In terms of the Disneyland, and now, as I said before, this is a transportation connection with other places, such as Disneyland. So we're asking, will Disneyland have some sort of ferry service to the cruise terminal? So as I've said, now these transportation connections will have to be discussed with the various stakeholders. If there are any, so we'll answer. I'm talking about Disneyland. Now, in terms of Disneyland, and talking about if you want to enter Hong Kong, can you go through the terminal? And we're looking at the Zhuhai-Macau-Hong Kong bridge, so we will also look at it in connection with that. So perhaps if we can have we need a terminal at Disneyland, we'll have to discuss it with that later. Also, the helicopter pad that Ms. Chen Yuan talked about this. There's a helicopter pad. As I understand it, although I'm not the main department regarding this, yes, the planning does include a helicopter pad, and there is a place reserved for that. But in terms of the services as well as the approval procedures, now, if the members have any suggestions, I suggest that you may discuss it with the relevant departments. Mr. Michael Tian's question, is it about only policy address? Now, of course, we don't only answer questions in regards to policy address, and there are and of course there are channels as well as in here that we can discuss other topics. In terms of the Bruce Lee Museum, now, as members know, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department has already received support from the LegCo to have a special exhibition, and also received funding from the Finance Committee. And this exhibition will be open to public within this year, and we expect that exhibition will last for 5 years. Of course, if you know, Mr. Tian, and we are discussing with the owner of the Bruce Lee's previous residence. Now, we have not had any consensus yet, but we are taking great efforts to reach a consensus. So right now, we do not have one. So we cannot wait, and we hope that the exhibition can take place in Sha Tin, the cultural museum over there. In terms of mainland tourists, there was a question about mainland tourists. In terms of mainland tourists, if we connect tourism with formula, then it would seem that the overall Hong Kong's tourism's impact to Hong Kong. Of course, we will study the impact on people's livelihoods, and we will reflect our findings to the central government. And that is how we can put more efforts into this. I think the secretary has already answered this question. Can you give us a timetable, please? There is no timetable? Now, this particular question and answer session has ended. And I want to thank the secretary as well as the commissioner and other officials to come and answer our questions. Now, as I've said, and as I've noticed, some members have a lot of questions, but unfortunately, the time is limited today, and so they don't have enough questions, and there's not enough time to answer. If there's a need, I hope then we can communicate via written reply, and so the secretary can give a more detailed reply in terms of giving a written response. Thank you to the secretary. Now we have briefing by the secretary for transport and housing on relevant policy initiatives in the Chief Executive's 2013 policy address. I would like to ask the Secretary for Transport and Housing, Professor Anthony Cheung, and other officials to come in. Welcome, Professor Anthony Cheung and other officials to come into this segment of our meeting. Perhaps we'll wait for the professor to settle, and now I'll ask him to brief us on the topics today. Professor, Chairman, the administration is strengthening Hong Kong as a maritime logistics and aviation industries center. First, I will talk about these topics in terms of the economic development procedures. In terms of aviation, we will improve the facilities of the HKIA to satisfy the requirements. The HKIA is developing the midfield developments as well, such as a new terminal, 20 new aircraft parking stands, as well as automated people mover. And the works are expected to be completed by mid-2015 and to satisfy the demand up to 2020. Furthermore, the new air cargo terminal project will be completed, will be used in the next months to satisfy the increasing cargo. In line with the medium-term development plan, the AAHK will also construct 16 new aircraft parking stands, and they will be completed in phases by the end of 2014. And the new CAD main building will be also completed soon. In terms of in 2012 March, the government has also agreed to a 3-runway system, and now the AAHK is carrying out the relevant planning work, including the environmental impact assessment as well, and it will take around 2 times. The AAHK will communicate with stakeholders and then discuss with them the areas of concern. We will also try to seek to increase the air services agreements with different places. So we have expanded our air services arrangements with 8 aviation partners: Luxembourg, India, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, the mainland, Russia, South Korea, and Saudi Arabia. And will provide more growth and development opportunities. We also initialized a new agreements with a new aviation partner, the Republic of Seychelles, to support the development of aviation. Our aviation partners include 61 countries and regions. In terms of port and maritime aviation, we were supporting with the national 5-year plan to push forth the development of maritime to strengthen Hong Kong's maritime market. So we will also develop high value-added maritime developments. In the policy address, the CE said that we will set up an economic development commission and a working group on transportation to have more ideas regarding this area. So in terms of ports and maritime consultants area, that is a consultancy study on enhancing Hong Kong's position as an international maritime center. We will overall review the current port facilities and infrastructure so that we can more effectively push forth the development of maritime industry and develop Hong Kong as a maritime center. And it will include a framework review of our department as well as the maritime department, the marine department, as well as various development councils will also be reviewed. Now, we're also developing personnel in this area. In terms of the port infrastructure, later on, we will give to the panel to consider increasing funding to dredging the container basin of Kuaiting of the current 15 meters to 17 meters, so that the new generation of ultra-large container ships can come into our terminals, and we hope to have member support. We're also conducting a preliminary feasibility study for the proposed development of Container Terminal 10 in Southwest Tsingyi. We're also proceeding with a study on the strategic development plan for Hong Kong Port 2013, and we're expected to be completed in a few months' time. We will consider the need to develop Container Terminal 10 having regard to the study results, global and local economic situation, performance of the port sector, and views of stakeholders. In terms of logistics, now the logistics benefits from the free port status, efficient and well-established external transport network, convenient multimodal transport connectivity, efficient customs clearance and comprehensive protection for intellectual property, and is developing in terms of high-value logistics services, as Asia-Pacific is attracting many overseas brands to set up regional distribution centers in Hong Kong. And to support this, in the past, we've pushed forth 2 parcels of land in Qingyi, and also hope to have, through a tendering process, push forth a 3rd piece of land in Qingyi, with a total area of 2.1 hectares, and to build a modern logistics facility. Meanwhile, we are actively identifying other suitable sites for modern logistics developments. So these procedures are very important to pushing forth the Hong Kong's aviation, logistics, and maritime development, and will facilitate industry development. So in the future, we will give the detailed plans and other procedures to table it at the current panel and to hear opinions from members. Now is the time for questioning. We have Frankie Yik, UFC Wing, 2 members. Any other members would like to ask questions? Yes, otherwise I'll write a line here. Mr. Michael Tian. Okay. So 3 members. I'll have a line here. Everyone will have 4 minutes. Mr. Yik Qiming. Thank you, Chairman. Now, I have several questions. In terms of paragraph 9, it said that we think that the third runway will come into effect in 2023. But it seems in the Guangzhou Airport is also building 2 runways. Now, it may siphon some business away from us. Now, can we increase the speed of this particular construction? Now, for further, in terms of Kuaiting, it is dredging the container basin. I see that some shipping companies are saying that these new ultra-large ships are coming into services. But now we see that we think that the dredging will only be completed in 2016. Can we speed up this process? Third, right now Hong Kong has a lot of basic facilities, so we can be an international aviation center. But now we have a lot of challenges, such as from Shanghai and Singapore. So they have various concessionary procedures to siphon away various personnel from us. So does the government has any procedures so that these friends who have come to Hong Kong and been helping us to prevent them from leaving? In terms of personnel development, it seems that there are some areas, says that there are some plans. But in terms of seagoing officers, some people tell me that in terms of the personnel for inner rivers, has also have a lack of personnel. So can the government do anything about this? Fifth, I think, Frankie, why don't you answer some questions? Because there are only some 4 questions. So if you ask so many questions, you may not have time. So, Secretary, why don't you answer 4 questions first? Yes, in terms of the 3rd runway, yes, according to the current plan, we will complete in 2023. So can we increase the speed? It really depends. A lot of preliminary work we're doing now, such as the environmental impact assessment, as well as some other areas, such as economic development, as well as support from the greater society. I want to share with Frankie Yik that we are impatient, and we do hope to increase the speed of this, and we hope to maintain our competitiveness in the aviation. So right now, Hong Kong, in terms of cargo, is the highest in terms of Hong Kong, and the passenger is the top 10 in the world. In terms of Kuaiting's dredging, later on we'll have documents to So I want to go back and look at the timetable and see if we can increase the speed on that. In terms of the maritime development, right now we are third behind Shanghai and Singapore. Right now we see that we should target some service area industries with the related services such as industry, finance, arbitration, the law. So to strengthen our supporting services. So in hopes we can increase the competitiveness of Hong Kong. In terms of personnel training, we truly understand that right now the maritime's hiring is very difficult, and I've heard this a lot from different friends from various industries. So in the future, how to strengthen the training will be work for us.
姚思榮議員。
哦，唔緊要。
其實同阿
Mr. Yu Si-wing. Well, I share the views of Mr. Yek. After the relocation, of the airport was planned in 1990, and it took place in 1998. A lot of things were done, and now it seems to take another 10 years to plan the third runway. So there's a need to review the procedure. It's not just a question of EIA. If the third runway, was commissioned in 2023, it would be saturated in 2030. When we had the new Petroleum airport, the lifespan was expected to be 25 years, and now the third runway would only last us another 7 years. So what is planning beyond the third runway? Yes, actually, for the third runway, we look at the demand in terms of passenger and cargo throughput up to 2030. Before the third runway is commissioned, we'll expand and upgrade our existing airport facilities. As I've said, we will also have some interim measures to the berths and facilities to meet the demand. We are facing competition from major airports in the region. But our advantages do not just lie in capacity. Our strategic position as a hub is also instrumental in attracting the passengers and cargo through Hong Kong. And we're also efficient in our carrying system. Mr. Yu said we use less than 10 years to plan the new airport, and why it would take longer to plan the third runway. Well, as a secretary, I asked the same question. I was on the advisory committee for the new airport. The planning of a new airport and a new runway, well, it's a different matter from it was many years ago. But we understand the importance of the third runway. The Hong Kong Eye is aware of this. And in due course, the Hong Kong Airport Authority would also embark on planning beyond 2030. Well, at that time, we had reclamation starting from an island, and now you have to reclaim in deeper water. It's more difficult. At that time, there was also importation of labor, and the political climate is also different. And that's why the time needed is different. And also maybe the government's decision-making process may be different, making the process a longer one. Mr. James Tin, Mr. Michael Tin. Back in 2004, the government said there will be a logistic center in Siu Ho Wan, but nothing is mentioned about that. Has this plan be cancelled? You talk about another facility in Cheng Yi. Can the Cheng Yi facility provide the same one-stop service like the original one proposed for Siu Ho Wan? And the third runway will be commissioned in 2023, and the capacity will be reached in 2030. I have heard that technically we cannot have the fourth runway. So if that's the case, you have to start the search for a new airport site. Has this been started? And also the noise problem is caused by the freight traffic, because the freight planes usually depart at night. Can we have a new site to divert all freight business so that they are far away from residential areas? Because of the logistics department, logistics industry doesn't have to be located near residential areas. Secretary, in the future, can we have a logistics park on Lantau? Later, there will be a second stage public consultation on enhancing land development. There will be proposals, including recommendations, put forth for public consultation. Do we build a logistics park on Lantau? We have to look at other factors. At this stage, we welcome comments. Well, have you cancelled the plan, or are you going to consult later? There will be consultation later. Chairman, there were in the past some ideas put forth for discussion, but there are things affected by the operation of the airport, such as ecology, and we must pay attention to those as well. As for the development needs after 2030, as I've said earlier, the Hong Kong Airport Authority is doing planning for the next stage to maintain our competitiveness, our airport capacity in terms of passenger and freight throughput. There must be suitable development. We also have to look at the aviation demand in the region. As for the other facilities, that would be considered in the next stage. We know that residents living near the airport have views concerning noise, including those living on Park Island. The Civil Aviation Department and the THP have sent people to understand the decibel level of noise at night there. The noise generated by the airport must not exceed the acceptable level. The Hong Kong Airport Authority will also encourage airliners to use new airplanes for the business at night. We also provide incentives for the reduction of noise at night. How about aviation control? Some other airports disallow certain types of aircraft to use the airport at night. Those airplanes tend to be older and more polluting. And we cannot wait until the capacity is reached before we carry out a study. I agree with Mr. Michael Tin that we need to look at the long term for the existing airport. you talk about getting more terminal berths. And in other words, the per hour passenger flow that will be higher. We've received many complaints, especially from tourists. In that it will take 40 minutes to just unberth, to disembark. This affects our image. I know immigration clearance of tourists is not actually on the agenda, but can you provide some input and address these issues? We hope the airlines would replace their fleet of airplanes. Newer airplanes should be used to reduce noise. Some airlines have actually done that. As for restricting some airplanes from using the airport at night, this is being considered. The Hong Kong Airport Authority is also considering the introduction of a levy as a kind of incentive or disincentive for such airplanes to use the airport at night. In the long-term planning, we have to pay attention to the long-term needs beyond 2030. As I said, some preliminary exploration will be started later on. Anyway, the Hong Kong Airport Authority will have to project the future needs, future traffic volume, to plan new berths, and also to provide for cargo facilities. As for the immigration clearance, we know that for visitors there's an issue with queuing time. According to the Hong Kong Airport Authority, sometimes the waiting time is rather long. We have talked to the Airport Authority and the Immigration Department on further measures to take to address this. As for the so-called levy, you have to pay attention that not many airliners are making a good profit. If with the introduction of such a levy, they may choose to go elsewhere, and we may lose some tourists. I hope your bureau and other bureaus can communicate better. If we have more runways, we don't have to allow so many airplanes to depart at night. So this is some of the people in the community think. Please consider this. All right, thank you for coming to this meeting. Members, if you have further questions, you may wish to submit your questions in writing to the Secretary after the meeting. And the Secretary, I hope you can respond to those in writing as well. Next, briefing by the Secretary for the Environment on relevant policy initiatives in the Chief Executive 2013 Policy Address. May I now welcome the Secretary for the Environment and his colleagues. Welcome, Mr. Wong Kam Sing, Secretary for the Environment, Ms. Christine Low, Under Secretary for the Environment, and Ms. Vivian Lau, Deputy Secretary for the Environment. Secretary, once you have settled, perhaps you can give an introduction. Chairman, regarding the development in the power supply market, that there are going to be challenges in the coming years. the government is going to prepare for a few things in relation to the development of the power market, such as the scheme of control review, and also to assess the 5-year plan, as well as the review beyond 2018, post-18 local electricity market review. The current scheme of control agreements would expire in 2018. The SCA stipulates that within the 2013, the two power companies and the company can make proposed amendments to the SCAs, but they can only be implemented with mutual agreement. Earlier on, we came back to report to the panel on the findings of the midterm review. We are now consulting the committee and the stakeholders. There will be some discussion later on. We're also going to review the fuel mix of the two power companies. Some proposals were made previously, but in the wake of the Fukushima accident, people now have got some other comments on the use of nuclear power. We further reviewed our fuel mix, taking into account and striking a balance among the 4 competing energy policy objectives of safety, reliability, affordability, and environmental protection. And also for the 5-year plan, the current plans would expire in 2013. In accordance with the SCAs, the power company would submit plans on the provision and future expansion of their system for 2014 to 18 for the review and approval of the government. In the review, the government would examine the different components, including capital expenditure, tariff and environmental implications, electricity demand projection, development proposals for generation and transmission and distribution system, as well as proposals on fuel supply. The current SCAs would expire in 2018. If we want to implement any change to the regulatory regime, the government will take into account all relevant factors. And before 2016, we're going to discuss the relevant matters with the power companies. We are now commencing preparatory works for the review, including the possible changes to the market framework, regulatory framework, such as segregation of power generation and power grids. The midterm review in 2013 provides a very useful platform for us to listen to views of the community and help us charting the long-term planning in the electricity market. These are profound issues. We are going to engage stakeholders, experts, the industry, and other stakeholders to solicit their views. We'll come back to report to members on the outcome of the relevant reviews and initiatives. 6 members would like to speak. Ms. Elizabeth Kwok, Ms. Sin Chung Kai, Dr. Fernando Zhao, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, and other members. I'll draw a line here. Ms. Elizabeth Kwok. Concerning the midterm review, the public would like the administration to do something to suppress the possible tariff increase in the future. They have high expectations. Whether you're talking about fuel mix or regulatory framework, we hope that the costs can be suppressed so that tariffs can be reduced. Chairman, I would like to suggest that we conduct a public hearing on the midterm review to collect views from the public. So let's listen to views and let's get more information from the government as to what is going to be done. Well, this is going to be our discussion. Have you got other questions? Mr. Sin Chung Kai. 2 things, all related to electricity. Just a digression here. You would like to have a public engagement exercise for the waste recycling, and also to allow the public some participation in the proposed charge for waste management. But for this 5-year plan of the electricity companies, I know you are going to examine their plans vigorously. but is there any room to follow the practice of allowing public participation in relation to the charge for waste management? Because in terms of public aspiration, they are more concerned about electricity tariff than waste charge for waste management. So are you going to incorporate or take on board public engagement and participation in assessing the new 5-year plans?
Thank you for your question. Now, in terms of any major policy reviews, of course, we need to hear from stakeholders, especially such a topic that will have a great impact on society. As to how we can do it and to what extent, of course, different policies will have different methods. I understand the suggestion from Mr. Sim. I think we'll have to go back and further review this and think about how to hear from the public. Of course, I understand. If you don't say you won't do it, then you have your views as very roundabout way. But there are many ways to have public engagement. First is that we can have a public hearing here so that some stakeholders can have an opportunity to reflect their views. Now, Chairman, you come from the business sector and you're very concerned about this, especially for the midterm review. So some of the members from the Democratic Party has given you a letter and hope that can we have a special public hearing so that in the government and conducting the midterm review can have a public hearing about this so that the public opinions can be reflected. So I don't know, Chairman, if you respond to this. And the administration, if in a review process, if you can have a response for each and every piece of opinion that you receive, I think that will be an improvement. But I don't know if the administration will consider that before you undertake a closer review with the two companies, will you respond to some of the public opinions? I don't think the government has time right now to answer you, but I will answer that after this segment we will discuss the public hearing issue. So we'll handle this later. Next is Ms. Sid Ho. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me to ask as not a member of this panel. Now, of course, there's a lot of complaints from the public about the tariff, and in terms of fuel mix, there's also been a lot of concerns. And now in 2013, we can discuss with the two companies as to the contents of the SCAs. So these concern really a lot of public livelihood. I think in the policy address there were 16 study committees. I think that the administration should set up a committee for this particular topic that includes different stakeholders and will compose of such environmental groups, representatives from grassroots, different political parties, business sector, scholars, etc. So we can have an open and transparent way to discuss these matters with the Secretary. I hope the Secretary will listen to this suggestion. In terms of details, I think that everyone, in terms of this panel as well as the panel on environments, will have already been discussed. I hope that the Secretary will give me an answer either now or perhaps later after considerations. Now, I want to clarify, Secretary, that in terms of, do you think that we should have a special group on just electricity tariff or something else? Chairman, now, in terms of electricity tariff, it's something that we must discuss. I think we can further discuss the scope of this. I think this is very related to the previous comment about public engagement. If we set up a new group, then we can set up a further series of topics, so we can discuss it perhaps in this panel, such as the framework as well as public engagement on this. Chairman, Mr. Secretary. Chairman, Ms. Sidho suggests that we should go back and think about this more, and we will do it. But under the current framework, we have an energy advisory group, and they do have different scholars, experts on this. So we'll have to think about. So if we do have set up a new group, how will we cooperate with that? So I think we have to think about this further. Thank you. This is Dr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the two companies increasing their tariff, of course, a lot of citizens are very concerned about this. But in terms of fuel mix, such as should we increase our use of nuclear energy, will there be a will there be a break of the monopoly? I think these are some things that we are very concerned about. Now, I think the Secretary mentioned that there will be 4 reviews this year, such as the midterm review of the SCAs, the 2014 and 2018 development plans for the 2 power companies, the fuel mix policy review, and the post-2018 local electricity market review. And these 4 items, I believe that a lot of citizens will hope to take part in these. And a lot of our members have talked about the transparency of these actions as well as how citizens can participate. I hope the Secretary can give us a clear timetable for these 4 reviews. So what are the main phases of each review, as well as the opportunities for public participation and some documents that can be open to be available for the public. So I hope that this can be done for the 4 reviews. Can the Secretary reply, please? Secretary. Chairman, thank you for the question from members. Now, we really are very concerned about public engagement. Now, last year we had 2 public hearings, and we listened a lot from the environmental groups as well as experts. So we did start on this, and there was widespread participation. So we truly respect their opinion, as well as to the substantial suggestion, as opposed to the participation for these 4 particular reviews, as to how. I think that is a reasonable request. So we have to go back and think about this. Thank you. Furthermore, Chairman, now Greenpeace has mentioned some suggestions. The administration had, in terms of the, had studied regarding the electricity generation model, as well as various policies, and I hope the administration can tell us more about this. Furthermore, there's also some forecasts in terms of demand for electricity, and I would like to know when those forecasts would be released. Can you give us a simple answer, Secretary, when these reports can be released? So I think the main question is hope that in many things we can have more transparency in terms of timetables. I think I will answer all these questions later comprehensively. Mr. Hu Chiwei.
具體嘅策略。
I would like to get something about your strategy. Well, there's going to be negotiations or lengthy negotiations, and you also want to promote saving power. That's an important factor of power demand. So are you going to have some concrete measures to be implemented within this year on energy conservation? And would that become part of the work to guide the power supply by the 2 power companies? Would that be indicators. Otherwise, it's a vicious cycle. We are going to have bigger and bigger demand, and the power companies have to build more and more generation units, and over time, tariffs would just go up and up. So any new idea for the coming year that you are going to engage us concerning energy conservation? Thank you, Mr. Wu. We're all concerned about energy conservation, environmental protection. And there are people asking us to look at people's livelihood as well as tariffs. These are important factors for the 4 important areas of work for the Bureau. The policy address has suggested a new concept. Building consumption of energy of buildings account for 90%. We have launched the green building codes. Other cities, Singapore, Tokyo, have grouped the green building related business into one organization, so that they can be focused in controlling energy consumption of buildings, and also to enhance energy conservation. We have pressure to build more power generation units, but we should try to incorporate more energy conservation features with new green buildings. We hope we can do more in terms of green building, and then this should be integrated with the policy on power generation. Are you going to give any guidance to the 2 power companies? Because if you can put your wisdom, you may be able to do a better job. Can you provide us with the indicators? Well, we are working on this, and we'll come back to share our ideas with you later. Sorry. We should have ended by 12:25. I'll extend the meeting time by 10 minutes. Sorry, Mr. Michael Tin. Energy policy is important to Hong Kong. We need to engage the whole community. It has to do with the fuel mix. I've talked to the Bureau a number of times. If we want to reduce emission and the standards, well, this is a global trend which has the support of our community, and we need to cut it by at least 20%. It's 541 and then 325, and there's a free plan 325 by the CLP, and the tariffs will go up by 40%. This is a big issue, but so far no one has paid a lot of attention. There's a lot of objection or opposition. So we have to look at where the money will come from. Is the government confident in convincing the public to accept a 40% tariff increase? And second, we can reduce power generation here and do more on the mainland, and you can get a mix that is cheaper. Is this going to be considered? So what do you think, Secretary? How can we settle all these different demands in the future? Under Secretary, Mr. Tin's question actually has been raised in private, and there has been some discussion previously. Some other members also want us to do more public consultation and to address sensitive issues such as nuclear energy. All these issues are being considered, and we are now considering the proper way to respond. So please bear with us that today maybe we cannot be very specific and go over those issues one by one. For example, how are we going to do with nuclear energy? When will there be consultation? But all these factors will be taken on board. For example, Dr. Zhang mentioned the areas, fuel mix, and this is also related to the potential opening up of the post-2018 review. And also, how can we conserve energy? And the greatest potential lies with buildings, as the Secretary has told us. If we want to factor in such changes to the future agreement, well, these are major changes. At this stage, we have to do some preparation, internal studies, and so on. And then we'll have to see how much energy or how much consumption can be reduced in our buildings, and that would affect the tariffs in the future. So I'm sorry that we cannot be very specific. They're all interlinked. Please give us more time. And lastly, on public consultation, rest assured, there will be ample opportunities for different types of consultation. Secretary, I just want to offer some comments. In reviewing tariffs or the policy, please keep an open mind. Any power generation policy would involve consideration of safety, costs, and long-term fuel supply. We should not just look at one. And don't be stubborn. If you adopt an open mind, it would be good for all. It's also good for tariff. Thank you for coming for this agenda item. But please stay on, because in the AOB we're going to discuss something related to your work. As I said at the very outset, the Secretariat has received letters from a number of members, as well as another letter from Friends of the Earth, suggesting that we should, in relation to the scheme of control of the two power companies, midterm review in 2013, conduct a public hearing. Well, this falls squarely within the ambit of the Panel on Economic Development, and there's a suggestion that we should have a joint meeting with the Environmental Affairs Panel. If members agree, we can proceed, because this falls within our ambit. Of course, we welcome the participation of other panel members or other panels, such as the EA panel. So if you don't have special comments, with your agreement, I can go ahead and organize the public hearing. So any comments? Please be brief. We have a time limit here. I agree that there's no need to have a joint panel meeting. It would be more cumbersome. We can invite members of the EA panel to join us. Ms. Sitho. Wearing my hat as chairman of the EA panel, let me say something. Unfortunately, power supply is not under the ambit of my panel, but it's a very related issue. I agree. I thank you for agreeing to organize a public hearing. I hope you can issue letters to all electrical members, because this is a matter of concern for all. Well, I think that can be done. So, first of all, I have to ask members, do you agree that we organize a public hearing? Agreed? Okay. Any objection? No objection? I've checked our schedule. The next regular meeting will be held on the 25th of February at 10:45. We start at 10:45. We can start earlier, 9:30 perhaps. And we have already got 2 agenda items. And on top, we'll have a session in the form of a public hearing. And then we can adjust the time in light of deputations. We are going to invite some organizations. If you want to make suggestions on who we should invite, please contact the Secretariat. Any comment from the Secretary? No? Okay. If there's nothing under ALB, Mrs. Sin. Well, it's acceptable. If you are going to start at 9:30, you might as well start at 9. Well, it would be adjusted in the light of the number of deputations. We can start as early as 8:30 or 6:30. No, it's too early. All right, there's nothing under ALB. Meetings is now adjourned. Thank you.